כתוב בתורה הקדושה, אנוכי אסתיר פניי ביום ההוא, ביום ההוא, ביום ההוא. אבל רבי נחמן מסביר, ואפילו בהסתרה שבתוך ההסתרה, בוודאי גם שם נמצא השם יתברך. ואפילו בהסתרה שבתוך ההסתרה, בוודאי גם שם נמצא השם יתברך. ואפילו בהסתרה שבתוך ההסתרה, בוודאי גם שם נמצא השם יתברך. ואפילו בהסתרה שבתוך ההסתרה, בוודאי גם שם נמצא השם יתברך. אוי אוי אוי, גם מאחורי הדברים הקשים העוברים עליך, אני עומד, אני עומד, אני עומד. גם מאחורי הדברים הקשים העוברים עליך, אני עומד, אני עומד, אני עומד. אוי אוי אוי, גם מאחורי הדברים הקשים העוברים עליך, אני עומד, אני עומד, אני עומד. גם מאחורי הדברים הקשים העוברים עליך, אני עומד, אני עומד, אני עומד. הקשים העוברים עליך, אני עומד, אני...
Rabbi Diane, please click on mute.
Can't hear you, Rabbi Dan.
Okay, how's that? Yeah, you can hear me?
There we go.
Okay, so as I overheard in the room, this is a song that was played on Shtisel that I totally love. And I put the translation of it in the chat. So in the hiddenness within the hiddenness, of course, Hashem, the Blessed One, lives. Even in the most difficult experiences that pass over you, I say, and then it goes in a loop, right? In the hiddenness within the hiddenness. Of course, Hashem, Yitbarach, the Blessed One, lives. So, and we're going, that's in part a quote from this week's Parsha, right? How God will hide God's face. And we're going to enter into that in a little while, but whatever. I probably planned too much for today. We're going to start with something else and then go there. And we'll see how far we get. And I think we're ready with the Torah blessing. Gil, if you could screen share that.
Does this have to do with anything about Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur preparing?
Does this have anything to do with, so Baja asked the $1 million question. This has everything to do with Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur and preparing for death. So we're gonna get.
I was afraid of that.
You were afraid of that.
I was afraid of
You were afraid of
that.
that. Well, it's a little scary. Baja says she's afraid of that. It's a little scary. So here we are. Rabbi Perlstein, would you
Sure.
bracha and translate it as well, please?
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Praised are you, source of life, source of blessing, source of wisdom, and all the learning that we need to do in this world, for giving us the opportunity to gather and to, as Rabbi Jessica used to say, to soak in all the material that we're all carrying together, and that we can just sort of be in a peaceful, restful, inspiring way this morning.
Amen.
Shabbat shalom.
Amen. Okay, again, great to see everybody, and I'm going to share my screen, do a little introduction, and then we will, oops, this is not what you want to see. Oh, let's try it again. That was a little video on education. So let's try it again. Now, why did not the right one come up? Here it is. Hi. Welcome, everybody. Oh, no, you're upstairs? Oh, I'm so sorry. Well, you missed a fabulous song, but it's on the source sheet, so you can catch up. Shabbat shalom, Shabbat shalom. So, we're pretty much at the conclusion of Moses's, I get stuck between English and Hebrew, Moses's long speeches. And it's interesting because his voice kind of recedes and the omniscient narrator is back. We're going to go back into his voice with Ha'azinu, the next parsha. And here Moshe is for sure preparing for death. Right, and preparing, even more to the point, preparing the Israelites for his death. And I think in a beautiful, generous, and generative way. So we're going to look at exactly how he does that. So what does death have to do with Shabbat Shuvah, or the Shabbat of repentance, or the Shabbat of return? So Yom Kippur in particular is said to be a rehearsal of our death. Right, and some people wear all white, kind of shrouds, and we don't eat, we don't engage in sexual activity, we don't drink, we don't wear leather, we don't partake of any of the usual sort of material pleasures of this world, rehearsing what it means as far as we can and be alive at the same time, rehearsing what it might mean to die. Right? And why is death, let's think about it. Why are death, preparing for death and repentance so closely connected? Let's put some quick comments in the chat about that. I'm gonna stop my share. What's the association here? What's going on?
Truth.
What?
Truth.
Truth. Why truth? Death and truth. What is that?
Because there's no time left and you want to be honest.
There's no time left. You're up against it, right? So what's your truth at that moment? And what's essential to you at that moment? Reconciling.
Peace.
Peace. Nice.
Just to go with everything, all unfinished business finished.
Right. Someone wrote reconciling, right? Forgiveness, I would say. To leave this world unburdened and unfettered. Beautiful. Beautiful, Richard. Pure, right. And Yom Kippur, as it says in the parsha that we read on that day, is all about becoming pure, all about God purifying us. Okay, let's do death and Yom Kippur atone for our misdeeds. Yes, death is considered to be an act of atonement. Okay, so rebirth, beautiful. Just listen to an amazing podcast from Pardes about how difficult it is to live with radical uncertainty. Oh, good, send us a link. Beautiful. Okay, so there's something about death that kind of pushes us toward tshuva, or allows us to be in that state of consciousness, or motivates us to be in that. It's like, oh my God, I'm going to die. I better set everything. I better set all my affairs in order. I better set everything right. I know my husband and I have been putting off, like writing a will. Like, why are we putting that off? Right? Because we're afraid of death, basically. Right? I imagine I'm not alone in that.
Yeah, right. I'm not.
Just had to say that. Okay. The source sheet, yes, thank you, Gil. Okay, so Gil is behind the scenes, arranging everything so we can do this. So thank you, Gil. Okay, I'm gonna go back to our source sheet. Share my screen. Here we are. And you have it in front of you, the people in the room as well. So the parsha opens up with a very interesting word. Vayelech Moshe vaydaber et hadvarim ha'ela el kol Yisrael. So Moses went, or Moses walked, and spoke these things to all Israel. Right? So why did Moses walk? And where did he go? What's that about? So we're going to dive into some beautiful commentary about that in a little while. First, I want to do a few verses. Vayomer alehem. Ben me'ah ve'esrim shana anochi. I am 120 years old. Hayom, today. I'm 120 years old today. Lo, I guess it's his birthday. Here we go, but he's about to die, right? Lo uchal od latzeit v'lavo. V'Adonai amar elai lo ta'avur et hayarden hazeh. Well, I can't, it says literally, here it says in English, I can no longer be active. I can't anymore go and come. Right, so what does that mean? So we're going to dive into that as well. In the commentary, and God said to me, I can't, what can I specifically not pass over? This Jordan into the promised land. Right, that's the tragedy of Moshe's life. And yet, as we've discussed in other, at other times, in other open books, and other study sessions, there's always, a future landscape that one is looking at when one leaves this earth, right? So the promised land is the future landscape that Moses is looking at that he can't go into, right? For those of us with children, you know that they, God willing, will outlive you and be in a world that we cannot imagine or comprehend. Like we try to imagine it, but we can't imagine it fully. And whether you have children or not, there's always a future that humanity will have it that you will not enter, that one will not enter. Okay. Okay, so now we are on the third verse. Adonai Elohecha hu over lefanecha. So is God your God who will cross over before you? So I'm not going, but who's going? God's going, right? Hu yashmid hagoyim ha'ela milfanecha. He will destroy the nations, these nations before you. The Rishtam Yoshua. Who over lefanecha kasher diber Adonai. Joshua is the one who shall cross before you as Adonai has spoken. So God's going to go pass over before you, not me, right? And God's going to sort of allow you to conquer the promised land. And Joshua will also go over before you. So look at what Moshe is doing. Moshe is saying, I'm not going, but you'll have God and you'll have Yoshua. Right, so already paving the way for their existence beyond him. Right, Moshe is trying to make life possible after his death for people that relied on him completely for these 40 years in the wilderness and to get out of Egypt as well. Yes? Okay, good. Okay, actually no more verses for now. We're going to go into some of the commentary. So look at Rashi. So Rashi is, what's that, 3. Okay, so Rashi says, okay, first he says, B'yom zeh, about Moshe, B'yom zeh noladati, B'yom zeh amut. On this day I was born, on this day I will die. So there's a symmetry to Moshe's life that he dies on his birthday. Lo uchal od latzeit b'lav. So how are we going to understand I can't go anymore and I can't come anymore? Yachol shetashash kocho. It could be that his physical strength will away, and then Rashi gives a proof text. Ela mahu lo uchal. What is I can't? Eni rashai. Oh, I see. I'm sorry, I skipped over something. The proof text actually is not a proof text. The proof text is a contradiction because it says at the end of the Torah that Moshe's strength and his vision did not abate at all. So in that case, what does it mean to say, I can't go and come, given the fact that he dies with all his strength, right? The way we'd all like to die at 120, with all our strength, all our cognitive abilities. So that's Moshe's death, as described later in the Torah. So what does it mean, lo uchal, if he has all his physical strength? It must mean I can't, I'm not permitted. Eini rashai, shenitla mimeni, harashut v'nitna liYoshua, because the permission was taken from me and given to Yoshua. So again, there's that ouch, right? You understand?
No, it's just, it's painful to hear.
It's painful. It is painful. It was taken from me and given to someone else. Yeah.
He's dying an unnatural death.
He's dying an unnatural death at 120. Right, because he's at the height, he's still at the height of his powers.
He has every physical reason to live.
Right, this is true.
Except
It
that
is,
God
it
says
is, it
you're
is,
gonna die.
yes.
It's a weird association, but it's a little like Washington voluntarily stepping down from the presidency after 2 terms. You know,
So-
he didn't have to go, but he did to set the precedent.
So Washington stepped down after, 2
terms.
2 terms of being
He
president.
didn't die.
Right, but there's a time, so we can take it literally, and we can take it in terms of like, it's, the Israelites are preparing for a new stage of existence, right? A new development in who they are, in their governance, in their independence, the post-Moshe stage. You're talking about the post-Washington stage. Stephen Rudin, did you ever hear that?
Yeah, I just, thought on the
Just
simplest.
a little louder so they can hear you.
On the simplest local level,
Yeah,
we all go out and go in every night. And I thought because he says, I'm born on this day, I have to die on this day. What he really can't do is say his prayers at night and go into this mini death that we all do in our sleep. And he doesn't have a modani, he doesn't have a breakup, a morning breath and a morning wake up. I think there's also a literalness. He's not going to have another day of sleep and breath.
he's not going to have that kind of
That-
daily
that kind of-
resurrection.
We all
daily
go out during
renewal.
our sleep and we all come back.
Yeah,
And I think if he doesn't get one more day, I think I accidentally said it ahead of Roberta, but I didn't mean to. Roberta went like this, I think she's probably thinking the same thing way ahead of me. So, Roberta always.
She was just
way ahead-
saying, like,
she's
I
always
hear
way
you.
ahead of me.
Right,
But
makes
anyway,
sense.
that's, yes.
it's beautiful,
what I
that's
said.
beautiful, okay. You want to say something, Roberta?
I
Same thing as
do.
Stephen or different?
No, it's really different. I was like digging what you were saying, so I was like,
I like that.
So back to what you said before, the connection between teshuvah and how much we all want to do that and its relationship to death. And I'm thinking, this is telling us the relationship between teshuvah and life, that what is life? I think what Torah is saying here is life is when we can return, when we can go out and come back, and go out and come back, whether it's, birth, death, marriage, teshuvah.
We're always coming and going, we're always entering and leaving.
And that's, it's so poignant because for Moshe, it's on like every level. You're not going into the promised land and you're not, but it's like, that's what life is. And maybe that's what the promised land is in Torah, which we never get to, like coming fully into life, like to fully go
Into
in
your promise.
so that you can fully come out and then fully go in.
Beautiful,
Yeah.
beautiful. Okay, Tony, one last quick comment, and I'm gonna go on with the text. Yeah.
I'm hearing his I am not permitted and the simplicity of that as not at all painful or poignant. It's when we know what we can or can't do, there's a great relief in that. I mean, there's the burden of being able to do more, and then there's the simplicity of I am not permitted. I don't hear pain or
That's so interesting. It's so interesting what we each hear. So Tony doesn't hear pain. Tony hears like the simplicity of that fact sort of as a relief. And I'm thinking about this song, and if anyone's interested, I can dig it up. It's called God Said No. It's an amazing song. And you know how you feel sometimes like in your life, like God says no, like you want to do this, you can't do it, or you can't do it at this moment. And I feel like that can be greeted with rage, which I often feel like, what do you mean I can't do it? Like, who are you, you know? Or it could be greeted with like, oh, okay, my life isn't that, it's this.
Right.
It's so interesting. Thank you, Tony. Okay, I'm going on. Okay, so here's a totally different understanding, and this is from the rabbis, it's in the Talmud, it's also in the Midrash. Let's say to go out and come in. B'divrei Torah. So what are we talking about here? We're not talking about coming and going physically. What we're talking about is Torah itself. So in other words, Torah from him stops flowing. It's a very simple and beautiful sentence. So it teaches us that the wellsprings and traditions of wisdom, I'm pointing at Rabbi Ben because that's how he translated the initial blessing, that the wellsprings and traditions of wisdom were shut or closed off. Okay, so that's interesting. That's what stopped going and coming for him.
So maybe that's what Vayelech Moshe is. It's a like a verb of halacha, of
Could be.
teaching.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Okay, so I'm going to go on now with some other interesting pieces of commentary on this. Same question, right? What's Vayelech? So Ibn Ezra, and here's a little bio of Ibn Ezra right here. And Ibn Ezra says, Halach el kol shevet b'shevet. So where did he go? It doesn't say where he go. Where he went. So here we're told where he went. He went to every tribe, every single tribe. L'hodia shehu met, to tell them that he was going to die. What an act of generosity. Physically went to every single tribe and said, listen, you need to prepare yourself. I'm going to die. Right? What a beautiful thing to do. And you know, one of my worst fears is not dying, but sudden death. So I don't have that opportunity to prepare and say goodbye to the people I love. Shelo yifchadu b'chazek libam b'divrei Yoshua, so that they won't be scared. And I think I said that correctly. B'chazek libam b'divrei Yoshua, and that he wanted to strengthen their hearts with words to Yoshua. Al ken katuv acharav va'ata tanchilena otam. Okay, and so that's why it says afterwards that you will sort of have them inherit the earth. Okay, and so according to Ibn Ezra, that's why it says afterwards that he then blessed the tribes, even though the blessings are actually recorded later, I guess in Ha'azinu. Okay, so the essence of this is he went to every single one of them to tell them what was going to be. Like, prepare for my death. Okay, good.
Well, and to tell them what death is, right?
Well, I don't know. It doesn't say that here, but maybe you're saying that. That's a different thing.
Yeah, well, that's what we want our teachers to tell us.
To tell us what death is. How do our teachers know?
Well, if they're Zen teachers, they don't know, but Jewish teachers, they seem to know.
They seem to know, okay. So far, I don't really know. Okay, yes.
You're very Zen, Rabbi.
Very Zen, I don't think so. I'm not Zen at all. A boiling cauldron of anxieties and badness. Okay, Paul, Rabbi Ben, Batya,
I'm wondering what Ibn Ezra's proof text is for Moses' generosity.
I think the only proof text is, it says Vayelech.
Right.
It says he's going to die. It doesn't say where he went. So he's sort of stitching these things together.
Yes, it seems aspirational to me.
Oh.
That Moses is many things, but generous is not a word that I would use.
Interesting.
And the only proof text that
Great.
come up with. So when Moses is arguing for the life of the Israelites on Mount Sinai,
Yeah.
his argument is not an empathetic argument. His argument is, look what it would do to you.
Right, because he's trying to convince God.
You're trying to
Because
convince
he's trying
God.
to convince God.
Right,
He's not
but-
talking to the Israelites, he's talking to God.
But it's an argument of image. It's not an
That's true,
argument
to
of
God
empathy.
though, because he knows what
Whatever works.
will sway God.
Yes, but in that speech, I don't get Moses' sense of generosity, of empathy with
Okay.
what is going on.
All right.
It is a practical.
He's not
tactical-
touchy-feely, that's for sure.
He is not, and nor is he on his deathbed. He's not. To me, clearly, he's not happy with the situation. God has given him an 80 days. He's
I think
struggling
he's
with
not, I
it.
think he is struggling. I think there are lots of places where you can see passages about Moshe's death, that he is struggling with this. Okay, Ben.
Well, just on that first, just looking at the verse, it could have just said, it says, Vayelech Moshe vayidaber et hadvarim, right? Usually it would just say that he spoke. to them.
Exactly, it's
So
very
there is
unusual.
there's this extra verb that suggests that
Exactly.
he went and did something with his body, probably, and there's some sense of going above and
It's an
beyond.
embodied
there.
verb. Yeah.
And like he was normally he would just proclaim something, everyone would hear it, and it would make its way to you. But he actually went this time, and there's a sense of intimacy maybe
Beautiful.
that I'm picking up on. I don't know. I'm.
That's beautiful.
It doesn't have to be generous, but or touchy feely, but there's a closeness to going. He's actually going to deliver the message, which is different. And the other thing about Roberta's comment about is he teaching them about death when he makes these visits? I love that idea because of this idea that he saw the promised land. It reminds me of Martin Luther King's last speech. The night before he was assassinated, he made this speech saying, I've been to the mountaintop. And it's a Moses image for sure of, and I may not get there with you, but I want you to know I've seen it and we're going to get there as a people. And there is something about at this point in the story, even though Moshe is sitting with the heaviness of he's not going to get to go, he does have some insight into the great beyond that he can impart to give them some hope. And I've never thought about the promised land as itself a crossing over into maybe a death realm that he's already departing in some way that allows him to transmit some wisdom to people who are still very much, alive and have a whole generation ahead of them. But that there is some knowledge that he has at this moment that probably he's giving over that will connect them before they get to 120, before they're too old.
Wow. So what you're saying is amazing, and it brings two thoughts to mind. One is maybe death itself is a promise, as opposed to a complete absence, right? Imagine if we lived that way. And number two is you helped me hear Roberta's question anew. And I think just by going to each of the tribes, as Ibn Ezra said, and I think as the Midrash also says, I don't remember, but that is teaching them about death. It's prepare for death. That's what he's teaching them, right? It's not necessarily knowledge of the realm of death, but this is how you die.
Beautiful.
Okay, so, okay, does anyone in Zoom land want to talk? Oh, yes, I see Richard Husit. Okay, so let me stop my share and then we're going to I'm definitely not going to get to everything today, but that's okay, right? You have a vision of the promised land, but you don't get there. Everyone could read the source sheet even after this session dies, so to speak. Okay. Richard.
Good morning and Shabbat Shalom and
Hello.
La Shalom Tika Tevu. I've always had a mystery about this. You simply may not want to go there. I fully understand. Where's Caleb? I mean, he, like Joshua, was praised after the Scouts episode. And then he just sort of disappears from the dialogue. It's I'm reminded of it now because Moses, in a sense, is going to disappear.
Yeah.
But there's this ongoing mystery about what happens to Caleb's heroism. Why Joshua? I know he was anointed as the successor earlier in Deuteronomy, but it's kind of strange. There's another mystery here about Caleb, and I don't know what to do with it.
Yeah, it's not that I don't want to go there. I just don't know the answer.
Okay.
I
understand.
I do note that Caleb appears and disappears at interesting moments. And if anyone has ideas about that, please put it in the chat. And I'm going to go on unless anyone else in Zoom land would like to speak. Sorry, Richard. We should investigate.
No, it's fine. I that's what I anticipated it would be, but I just felt like saying it.
Yeah, no, it's a good question. Okay, I'm going to share my screen.
There's one other person who was raising his hand.
Oh, there was in Zoom?
Yeah.
I'm so sorry. Thank
you.
you.
Right there.
On the right. So there's one other person who's
over on that corner, top corner. He's now leaning his
Who else wants to speak?
No, that's the one who just.
No, that's Richard.
That's what just.
Oh, was that Richard?
Yeah. Yes. Okay, so here we go.
Really?
Yes, that is Richard. Okay.
Wow.
So let's look at Ramban. No, but there's water out. Okay. Vayelech Moshe kasher ishlim kol dvarav. So, and Moses went where Moses concluded his words. Do you remember? I forgot to say, remember the last parsha was Nitzavim, right? The whole community stood before him, right? So now what's going on? So he links that parsha, standing and going, to this parsha, and he went. Kasher ishlim kol dvarav, az halchu, kol hanitzavim lebanav, v'hataf anashim ish le'elohav. So after everybody was standing around, or not standing around, but standing before him and before those, momentous words that we looked at last week, everyone went back to their tents. So that's why Moshe had to go, to see them, because they had left already. Okay. Okay. So let me just see if there's anything else here that we need to look at. Okay. I think that's basically the point. Okay, thank you so much. So this is fascinating. I learned this, and we'll look at Rachel Annisfeld's piece in a minute. That there's a book-ended quality of this, and he went, because that verb starts his career back in Exodus 4, where it says, "Vayilech Moshe vayashav el yeter chotno." This is after the burning bush. Moses went back to his father-in-law, Yeter. He's called Yetro sometimes, and Yeter other times, and other names other times, and said to him, "Elchana, I will go, va'ashuva el achai asher b'Mitzrayim, and I will return to my brethren in Egypt. Ve'ereh ha'odam chayim." And see if they're still alive, basically, or how they're doing. Vayomer Yitro leMoshe lech l'shalom. And Yitro said to Moshe, "Go in peace." So that's the book-ended quality of this verb. And then we have Rachel Annisfeld here, who really ties all this together so beautifully. Is there someone in the room that would like to read this passage? Like to read this? Help me out.
10?
Yes.
10. Moshe understood what sustains us during these leave takings and transitions, a sense of some continued eternal holech presence.
Hashem Elohecha hu haholech imcha lo yarpacha v'lo ya'azvecha. Okay, so wait, hold right there, because I realized that we didn't do the rest of this passage. We have to go back. Sorry. Okay, so I think we're on 5, right? Well, let's start from 4. That's 4. We're now back in passage 1. Going back because we didn't finish the passage. So Adonai will do to them as done to Sichon and all kings of the Amorites into the countries when God wiped them out. So this is again all about conquest. Unitanam Adonai lifnechem va'asitem lahem kechol hamitzvah asher tziviti etchem. Adonai will deliver them up to you, and you shall deal with them in full accordance with the instruction that I have enjoined upon you. But now back to the empowerment speech. Chizku v'imsu. So be strong and be courageous. Al tir'un. Don't be in fear. Below ta'artsu, ba'al ta'artsu, and don't be in dread before them. Ki Adonai Elohecha hu ha'holech imach, lo yarpecha v'lo ya'azvecha. So why should you not be afraid? Because God is the energy, the entity, the something who walks before you. Who walks with you. God will not fail you and will not abandon you. So what a beautiful thing, right? So like when you're facing something hard, to know that you will not be abandoned by someone, some energy, by God. I'm trying to cover all my bases here. Okay. Vayikra Moshe liYoshua, vayomer elav le'enei kol Yisrael. So Moshe called to Joshua and said to him before the eyes of all of Israel. And it's interesting, the eyes of all of Israel plays a role in the Torah, right? What do the Israelites see and don't see? Mm-hmm. Where are we? We're in verse 7 in the first source on the page. We went back to the first source because we didn't finish it. So he said to them before all of Israel, Chazak ve'amatz, be strong and be courageous. Ki ata tavo et ha'am hazeh ha'aretz asher nishba Adonai la'avotam v'teit lahem ata tanchi lena otam. Be strong and resolute, for it is you who shall go with this people into the land that Adonai swore to their fathers to give them, and it is you who shall apportion it to them. So he prepares the people, and he prepares his successor before the eyes of all the people in way of preparing both of them at once. Yes? Okay, good. Okay, so now we'll go back to the Rachel Annisfield piece, and hopefully it will make sense now. Okay, go on, Roberta. Now we're back in, 10? Yeah, okay.
Moshe understood what sustains us during these leave-takings and transitions, the sense of some continual, eternal kolech presence.
So the parsha starts with him going out or him walking, and then describes God twice as the one who walks with us or before us.
For the eternal, your God itself walks with you. They will not fail you or forsake you. I may leave you, says Moshe. I may walk away, walk on to the next world, but God continues to walk with you always. You can count on that. Hold on to that steadiness in your times of grief and in your times of internal change and turmoil, in your letting go and in your being left. There is always one who walks with you. Amidst the storm and swirl of constant change, inside and out, there is one that always walks with you through the storm, holding you in steadiness.
Yeah.
As we say in Psalm 27 regularly this season, for my father and my mother may forsake me, but Malchut will gather me in. Moshe knows that people have trouble feeling this presence, that we're not always aware of this steady walker. And so he himself walks for one last time through the camp to deliver this message to each and every tribe personally, to be for the last time God's legs and mouth on earth, a walking emissary of the ultimate walker, reminding people of God's presence through his own last bit of presence on earth. We carry the eternal walker inside us, and as we walk through the camp, through life, we deliver this message of ultimate steadiness again and again in each personal encounter we are granted, even as we too are always slowly leaving.
Wow. So, it occurs to me as we read this beautiful passage that my original question about why is death a motivator for tshuva, I think there's another angle to this, is that tshuva, repentance, is not only motivated by death, but it is a death. It is a death in the sense that our old identity shifts and changes and maybe dies on some level. And perhaps this, encouragement, like what can we hold on to as we go through these profound shifts of tshuva, right? It's like we read this parsha so that we ourselves are encouraged to go through this process at this time during these 10 days of awe. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, it evokes for me like the way in which tshuva is about return, and death is in some way like if we understand, like if we have a conception that when we die we go back to some place where we came from, in a way that where this just makes me, it's in a way it's very comforting and also very scary at the same time, that we are all always inherently walking back toward, right, that ultimate,
forwards and back.
We're somehow
walking is forwards and back.
That tshuva is
Right.
all about that. Like we're trying to make progress, but we're also trying to like remember and like return to who we really are and who we, and there's some way that death is like this, again, promise. Like in the future, like just by virtue of being alive, you are walking in that direction.
And another way to think about death and tshuva is death as home.
And this is why we come downstairs and then go back upstairs.
Yes. Yes.
All right. So, wow, pretty heavy today. Heavy stuff, right?
Death as home.
Death as home. Okay, I'm going to go on.
I
I'm going to go on. Roger, did I forget to call on you before?
You did.
Oh my God, I abandoned you. I failed you. I
I'm
forsake
obliged
you.
to forgive you.
Good, Dr.
Although I don't have to say that prayer on Friday night. I say a prayer from Lubavitch Siddur that says, Master of the universe, I hereby forgive anyone that hurt me and that made me angry in this way and that way, intentionally, not in this incarnation or any other.
Wow. Love that.
So,
Wow.
I take this for granted that, I'm going to come back. Hello.
You come back to this earth after you die, is that what you're saying?
Excuse me?
Come back to this earth after you die?
Yeah, right. So I mean, that's kind of hidden, and then it suddenly appears from Kabbalah and so on.
Wow. So, go ahead, Beth.
So also, I found it interesting that at the beginning, God tells Moses, you're not gonna see the promised land. And then he goes around telling all the tribes that I'm going to die soon. So it's like he wanted to sort of cushion them, and that's the part that is very kind.
Yeah, it's very kind. Even though Paul doesn't believe it, it's very kind. But also in terms of what you're saying, Batya, it's like also forgiveness is a kind of death, because it's a letting go, right? It's like, I'm not going to hold on to my anger. I'm going to forgive you.
Yeah.
And it's also kind of letting go of like a narrative that you're kind of stuck on. At least that's my experience. Like, I was right, letting go of that kind of rightness.
It took me about 5 years to forgive a very important person in my life who gave, birth to me. But
I can't imagine
in saying that over and over again, I eventually forgave her.
After her death or before her death?
After her death.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that.
So as far as ritual, I mean, I try to be a creative person, and but the scripture is really so important to know what the right thing is.
Thank you, Batya. Thank you. Beautiful. Thank you for that offering. All right. So this next is, and this all relates so beautifully. So Psalm 27, which we recite, in this period of time, you'll see in a minute, it really resonates with all these themes. Shema Adonai koli ekra v'chaneni v'aneni. Hear, O Lord, when I cry aloud. L'cha amar libi bakshu panai et panecha Adonai alakesh. In your behalf, my heart says, seek my face, right? Al taster panecha, don't hide your face, mimeni. Al tat ta'af avdecha. Do not thrust aside your servant in anger. Ezrati hayiti al tisheni v'al ta'azveni Elohei yishti. Do not forsake me, do not abandon me, O God, my deliverer. Now here's my favorite line. Ki avi ve'imi azavuni v'Adonai ya'asveni. Though my father and mother abandon me, the Lord will take me in. Okay, so just remember those, that those themes of abandonment and hidden as we go to the next passage. Okay, Rabbi Ben, do you feel like reading in Deuteronomy 31, 16 to 19?
Sure.
Great.
In the Hebrew? Or
Hebrew English.
Great.
Just translate as you go on.
Vayomer Adonai el Moshe, Incha, Shochev im avotecha, v'kam ha'am hazeh v'zana acharei Elohei Nechar haaretz. Asher hu ba shama b'kirbo ve'azavani v'hefer et briti asher karti o ito. So the Lord said to Moses, you are soon to lie with your fathers. This people will thereupon go astray after the alien gods in their midst in the land that they are about to enter. They will forsake me and break my covenant that I made with them. Okay, so let me just say that this seems really harsh, right? Like, what's going to happen? You're going to die and they're going to sin. And they will forsake me. So the abandonment now is not of God, by the people, but it's by the people of God. But I also think that there's something kind of liberating about understanding, like, this is what Israel's going to do. They're going to leave. They're going to come back. This is the pattern. They're going to sin. They're going to return. This is all of our patterns, right? No one remains in perpetual tshuva. We're going to make tshuva. They want to, like the next week, we're going to do something like sort of transgressive, not in the best sense of the word, but in the worst sense of the word. Yeah. You know what, Paul? Let's get through this passage. Okay, go ahead. V'chara pi bo v'yom hahu ve'azavtim v'histarti panai mehem v'haya lechol u'matzauhu ra'ot rabot v'tzarot ve'amar v'yom hahu halo al ki ein Elohai b'kirbi metzauni hara'ot ha'ele. Then my anger will flare up against them, and I will abandon them and hide my face from them. They shall be ready prey, and many evils and troubles shall befall them. And they will say on that day, surely it is because our God is not in our midst that these evils have befallen us. It's like, hello. Like they wake up and say, God is not, but you abandoned God. So, and it's not necessarily a punishment. It's kind of a natural consequence. Yeah. Like if you abandon God, then God will not be with you. And all kinds of troubles will come upon you because you're missing that kind of source of support. Okay, so now we're going to go more deeply into the hiddenness in the next verse. V'anochi haster astir panai b'yom hahu al kol hara'a asher asaki fanat el Elohim achirim. Yet I will keep my face hidden on that day. I will surely, really, truly, completely hide my face because of all the evil that they have done in turning to other gods. V'ata hitvu lachem et hashira hazot v'lamda et b'nei Yisrael simah b'fihem leman tiyeh li hashira hazot le'ed b'vnei Yisrael. Therefore, write down this song and teach it to the people of Israel. Put it in their mouths in order that this song may be my witness against the people of Israel.
Really?
Well, it doesn't say
It's funny.
against. It doesn't say like.
When I read it in Hebrew,
Yeah.
I didn't hear that translation. at
Yeah,
all.
it doesn't say against. It's going to be an aid. It's going to be a witness for you.
Yeah.
It's almost like, can you imagine what book you need to write so that when you're in your most depressed state of being, you can read that narrative and know you're going to be okay. Right? What's the long view? What's the long story? Okay, so I see a few hands in the room, and I don't see any hands in Zoom at this moment. Okay, so I have Paul, quick comment, Stephen, quick comment, quick.
Generosity is now in the room. And God is finally recognizing itself and finally recognizing the reality of the Israelites.
Beautiful. Generosity is in the room. I love it. And in the room, in the form of this Torah that we've been given, right? We're the recipients of the generosity. We've got this book, right? We know the long view because we're reading these ancient words. We're going to go and come. We're going to sin. We're going to restore. We're going to return. We're not. We're going to be abandoned. We're going to abandon. Stephen.
I don't know. It just seems like too many steps. I keep thinking of Archimedes' solution to Plato's paradox. Why do we have to go to all these steps? Can't God just do like the Samantha thing and just twitch his nose and skip a couple of these steps?
You want to live in Bewitched?
It's an awful lot of steps. I'm just saying, Moses is going to die. It's, he's already got his problems. This is an awful long kind of dialogue to go through about what God's going to do with the people that Moses has spent all his time trying to help to begin with. It just seems like an awful lot to have.
You want it to be simpler.
I'm wondering why God, who can do everything, doesn't make this a bit simpler.
So let me answer that question by suggesting that it's a document written by human beings and their understanding of God in their lives and how God works. And life doesn't work that way. Life doesn't work that way. So we might wish for a God that sort of resolves all our problems or makes things simpler, but it doesn't seem like that is the reality of life. Doesn't seem like it, at least not my life.
Yeah.
As far as I know you, Stephen, not your life.
That's
I mean, they're anticipating a God that talks like Dickens, not a God that writes like Nabokov. I mean, it's just awful.
It is very complicated. Okay, Tomas.
Very briefly, two thoughts.
Yeah, loud for the Zoom people to hear you.
Thanks for reading it so that I could hear it in Deuteronomy, because the thing that I noticed was the promise that I will abandon you is actually a commitment. It's the opposite of abandonment in this strange way, because one aspect of abandonment is surprise. It's a shock. Like if you're abandoned in some ways because righteously or reasonably you expect not to be. But if someone says 1,000 years from now, on such a date, I will abandon you, that's a commitment. It's not an abandonment.
That's so interesting.
It's a paradox.
It's almost like what Moshe does for the tribes. He goes he tells them, I'm going to be leaving you.
Right. I'm here
So
to
God
tell you
tells
I'm not
us
here.
there are going to be times in your life where I'm going to be missing.
Yes.
So you can prepare for that.
Yes, and then just very briefly, I wish I could speak to the Hebrew, but at least in the English, the etymologies of these words are amazing, because forgive, such a basic word, like it just means to give or to give up or to give in. Like I forgive you just means I give you. And the root of give is an old word that also means to receive. It's one of these weird Janus words that means the opposite. And so the root is actually to hold. And it became in English both to give and to receive, like the word like guest and host are actually the same.
Because actually giving and receiving are the same.
Exactly. So I give you also as I receive you.
Yeah,
but
beautiful.
Interestingly, abandonment comes via French, and to abandon means to give up, to give in, to give over. So abandonment and forgiveness, if you trace them through English, they converge. And I don't know what that means, but it must mean something.
Okay, I want to go on, and I want to not call on people who've spoken already. So I'm sorry about you.
Really?
It's now 9:40. We only have 5 minutes, so I'm gonna go on. I'm sorry about you. I'm gonna try to bring you in a minute. Okay, let me just look at the next passage for a second. Okay, so sorry, okay, so this is really beautiful about the poem. I'm going to just read a couple of lines here.
Are you still in 12?
No, I'm in, what is this? This one, 14. Okay. Okay, so Ki avienu el hadama shenishbati lavotav zavat chalav udvash v'achal v'sava v'dashen v'fana el Elohim acherim v'avadum v'na'atsuni v'hever epiti. I bring them into the land flowing. Remember the flowing with milk and honey. 13. Really? Yeah. Oh, I think you haven't. Okay, sorry. Milk and honey that I promised on oath to their fathers, and they eat their fill and grow fat. So they're growing complacent and turn to the other gods and serve them, spurning me, hating me, right? Na'atsuni, the hate there as great BT. So they break the relationship documents, right? V'haya ki timsena oto ra'ot rabot v'tzarot v'anta hashira hazot lefanav v'ed kilo tishkach. Pizaro, ki yadati et yitro asher hu oseh hayom b'teren avienu el haaretz asher mishpati. And the many evils and troubles that before them, then this poem shall confront them as a witness. This will never be lost from the mouth of their offspring. And it's amazing because here we are reading it. It's not lost from our mouths. For I know what plans they are devising even now before I bring them into the land that I promise on oath. Okay, so then Moses wrote down the poem. I'm going to go on to the, oh, yes, okay. All right, so I want to do one more thing with you.
What's the significance of calling the Torah Shira?
The Torah is a Shira. We sing it every week. The Torah is a song.
Well, there's certain parts that don't make for a good
That's
song.
true. That's true. But remember, it was oral, and it was probably sung when it was oral. And that's how you remember, right? Long passages through singing them. I had a wonderful professor, Yochanan Mubs, who set the whole Mishnah to music, composed the whole Mishnah to music and would like sing it. And that's how we memorize it. So that's my assumption. Okay, so then the Rabbi Nachman of Bretzlav, right, the Hasidic Rebbe, talks about God in concealment.
17.
Okay, yeah, 18 on the screen because I added one more. It was printed. 18 on the screen. So this is an unpacking of the verse that we looked at. Haster, aster, et panai. Right? I will hide. A doubling of that verb. My face. There are two levels of concealment. I'm going to read it in English because I think it was written in Yiddish, so it's okay. We don't have to do Hebrew. When God is hidden in a single concealment, then as well, it is very difficult to find God. Yet when God is hidden in a single concealment, it is still possible for an individual to toil and strive until they find the divine source, since they are aware that God is hidden from them. So if you're aware in your life that God is hidden from you, you can find them. But when God is concealed in a concealment, and this goes back to the song that we started with, for those of you who heard it, that even in the concealed place, you can find God. Even in the dark places of your life, you can find God. And the song is at the bottom of the sword sheet if you want to play it later. When God is concealed in a concealment, within a concealment, in other words, the concealment itself is concealed from them so that they are completely oblivious to the fact that God is hidden from them, then it is entirely impossible to find God since they are not at all aware. So in other words, actually, I don't know in other words. Let me guess at what this means and maybe people can help me. So if there's a single concealment and you experience that concealment, you're aware of that concealment, you can find God. But then there's a concealed concealment. And if there's a concealed concealment, you don't even know to look. So how do you find out the concealed concealment? I'm not sure, but my sense is through actually pain. Like you understand that there's something missing.
But then you can still find it. Or
You have
you can't find it, but it'll still be
you
with
have to feel the pain in order to look. You have to feel the pain in order to look. Yeah, Ben.
I feel like it's helpful to think about it experientially. So to say, okay, I feel that God is hidden. When I connect to the feeling of yearning that comes out of that, I've broken through some kind of concealment. That's like but if I don't see that, if I don't see that there's actually divinity in the yearning and I'm just in despair, that's like another layer of concealment. And then he's adding even a third one.
I actually think it's even worse. If you're not even in despair.
Right.
And you don't know. You don't
That's, I
even
think,
know
right, the
there's
third
something
layer.
missing.
It's like, I'm not even, right.
And then it's over? And
That's
it's in the end?
the concealment of the
You're done?
concealment. You're not, well, he doesn't, that's the end of the passage.
Well, look at the next two passages down. So where it begins, I'm going to call on you in a minute,
Okay,
Katya.
thank you.
Yet in truth, in all concealments, God is there. In truth, even in all the concealments, even in a concealment within a concealment, God is certainly